You're listening to the Cinemental Podcast.
Shall we begin?
Okay, welcome back to the Cinemental Podcast, where we discuss mental health in cinema and television and how it is portrayed. What did they get right? What did they get wrong? And what do you need to know about mental health? I'm Jeffrey Jones, and I'm a screenwriter as well as a professor of screenwriting, and I'm joined by my brother, a general and forensic psychiatrist, Dr. Joshua Jones.
Hello.
Okay, so last episode, Josh, we talked about psychopaths and serial killers. Today we're going to talk about people who are equally as crazy, people who try and make a living through music. I'm talking about the movie Whiplash. I'm excited. To dive into this one.
Before we begin, everybody remember that the information expressed in tripped right over
You're
that.
getting it. You're going to get it.
Cinemental. I can't. Okay. The information expressed in Cinemental is for educational and informational purposes only. Nothing expressed in this podcast is medical advice, and no doctor-patient relationship is created. And of course, if you or someone you know is suicidal or experiencing a severe mental health crisis, please call or text the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline number 988.
Great.
Jeff,
and I also
kick it off.
I want to briefly mention our sponsor, Zildjian, makers of both cymbals and discus. Whether you throw in the Olympics or just throw down some sick beats, please don't throw our products at people. Okay.
Wow, that was you went with that today. Okay.
I don't control our sponsors, Josh. Okay,
tell us about Whiplash. Summarize that for us.
Yeah. So this is an aside. This doesn't have to do with mental health. I just love filmmaking, and there's a certain structure that all movies have where the inciting incident happens right around like minute 15. So in Top Gun, it's when the bald guy's like, "You two characters are going to Top Gun," and the inciting incident is the moment the characters' lives will never be the same, whether they know it or not. So Indiana Jones learns about the Ark. He hasn't decided to go after it. He learns about it. That's the inciting incident. The inciting incident for this movie is the very first scene. We know that there's an obsessed drummer, and we know that there's a mentor, and he's abusive. We learn all of that in the first 2 minutes. And I think it's only really, really good filmmakers and writers who can pull off the inciting incident in the first moment. Because it sets up everything you need to know, especially in terms of the mental journey we're about to go through with each of the characters. Talk about the characters for me. Break down. We got Fletcher played by J.K. Simmons, Nieman played by Miles Teller. What's going on with Fletch? What can we say about good old Fletcher?
All right, I think probably any pop psychologist can pick out right away that Terrence Fletcher is your classic narcissist. He has narcissistic personality disorder. Everything is about him. Every person is there to serve him. He has no empathy or sympathy for others, treats people in a very destructive fashion, and justifies it to himself throughout the movie. As we talk more about Terrence, I'll get into some of the things about his narcissism that don't quite match up with classical narcissism, or some things that I'd like to have seen fleshed out more. And then you got Nieman, and he's a little bit more of a puzzle to me. I don't think his character got as fleshed out as much as I probably want to see it. He was clearly obsessed, and so obsession is the theme around which I think his character is built, but not to the degree of like obsessive compulsive disorder, which we can talk at length about later, or anything like that. He got very obsessed, and he got wrapped up in trying to please his mentor.
Yeah, let me ask you two questions.
Which I think is one of the things you want to talk about.
Yeah, I'm very excited about talk about mentorship and the role of coaches, the role of bosses, the role of teachers. But let me ask you a couple questions about that, because last week we also talked about narcissism. And I wanted to follow up on that and ask, like, what is the line between someone who's narcissistic and someone who just wants to change things? Someone who believes they have the power to change things.
Well, narcissism's not bad. I think we have to get that out of the way. So we all have a level of narcissism. It does sound bad, but we all have a level of narcissism. And of course, it comes from a Greek myth, Narcissus, who was so enraptured with his own reflection in water that he either got pulled into the lake or died of starvation by looking at it so much. You have to have some healthy ego.
I did not know that. I had no idea that's where it came from.
Yeah.
That's great.
Narcissus.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I was today years old.
So it's good to have some healthy ego strength to say, I can do this. Where it becomes pathologic is when it starts to interfere in some ways in your functioning in one of the many spheres of life, with your vocational, your interpersonal, your educational sphere, anything like that. That's where it gets pathologic, where we would classify somebody with a narcissistic personality disorder, for instance.
Right.
When it becomes so maladaptive that it starts to be harmful to yourself or others.
Yeah, define
Terrence,
maladaptive.
Maladaptive means badly adaptive. I mean, it literally means badly adaptive. Mal meaning bad, and so we all have adaptive behaviors. We learn as we grow in life. We change things. Maladaptive behaviors are those behaviors that maybe they worked at one point briefly, and then they got locked in for us, and then you keep doing it over and over again, even though it's not working as good for you anymore.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I think Nieman is such an interesting character because yes, you have the obsessive part, and in a way he chooses to continue the abuse, but in many ways, the things that Fletcher does to him are grooming, are grooming techniques.
Yes, correct.
And it's at what point does someone realize that this isn't just my obsession, I'm actually being the victim of abuse?
Great question, and I don't know that Nieman ever fully realized that. I mean, he did end up testifying against Fletcher, but very coerced at the behest of his dad. I don't know that he ever really did it. And when we start talking about the movie, which we should hear in a second, it's that piece that I had a real problem with the ending of the movie. Not that it was bad, because this movie was technically great, but I wanted to root for that character, and he didn't quite have the redemptive moment. And I know everybody's going to disagree with me, because that drum solo at the end was fantastic.
I don't think people will disagree with you, because you're absolutely right. And this is a tragedy. Like I think he meant for this to be a tragedy. So he isn't redeemed in the end. He doesn't walk away. He's given the chance to have the girlfriend, get some distance, get some perspective. And he's presented with that choice, which is the purpose of every movie, is present with a choice, and then characters either change or they die, and he chooses the darker path. So this is a tragedy, and he doesn't get that. Yeah, he doesn't get that redemption, and which is also why I love this movie so much, because it's not necessarily a feel-good ending. Okay, and so I think this is important to sort of frame the conversation a little bit. So I want to talk about theme. And so the definition of theme, and I talk about this all the time in class. So the definition of theme is it's an artist's statement about the human experience. So Damien is the filmmaker, and his statement about the human experience is probably something akin to if you want to be the best, you have to be willing to sacrifice everything. And then the question is, what's healthy? So there's two themes. There's Fletcher's theme and Nieman's theme. And Fletcher's theme is mentor at all cost. Throw the symbol to make somebody great. Whatever you have to do, and the greats will never give up. And that's what he's willing to do. That's what he believes. Nieman, I keep saying Neumann like he's a microphone. Nieman's he doesn't really know what it takes to be great yet, but every time he fails, he's willing to double down. And so the question for him is he willing to do the things that it takes to be great? Can he make the sacrifices? And then in the end, he chooses to. Sorry, go ahead. Looks like you
no. Nieman's character is very interesting in a couple regards. Typically, from a psychiatric and psychological perspective, someone who gets really sucked into a mentor like that has some kind of a transference, or they're projecting their own needs onto this figure. The very obvious one is the father figure, and in this movie, it was curious because he didn't have an absent father. In fact, the father, played by Paul Reiser, was pretty omnipresent. Yes, he had a mom that left early, but it wasn't really the same thing. So I didn't really I couldn't really understand why, from the very beginning, Fletcher's opinion was so all-consuming to Nieman. I didn't quite get that.
Yeah, and I almost have, it's not necessarily a personal connection with it, but it's a bit of a personal connection. I think that he was looking for someone who wasn't dragging him down to average. There's a great moment at the very beginning when we're introduced to Paul Reiser, where they're sitting in the theater and they're talking about, remember, have a life, all these things.
You get to be my age, you get perspective.
I don't want perspective.
Ooh, sorry.
And someone knocks into him. And this is obviously a choice. The filmmakers made the choice to have someone knock into him. And he says sorry. And Paul Reiser's character says sorry.
Yeah,
that's scripted,
that
and that's meant to show us this is a wet noodle. This is not somebody we want to listen to. He doesn't know the way. He's not the mentor.
Yeah. All right. Quick side note. That's probably true. As we've talked about movies, my opinion of actors and characters is always clouded by things they've done in the past. And Paul Reiser, fabulous actor. I cannot not see him as the corporate shill who sells Ripley out in Aliens. He was so incredible at that. He was so incredible.
I thought you were going to say Mad About You.
That's what I see. That's why I couldn't get into Mad About You. It's because of that. It's like, he's going to stab you in the back. He's just great. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
No worries. Okay, so
fanboying out there for a second.
I talked about meeting the dad for the first time, the incident with the popcorn, which I thought was really interesting. So one of the things that Fletcher first does when he pulls Nieman out is he tells him 6 a.m. And Nieman shows up at 6 a.m., but they're not scheduled until 9. To me, it's the first incidence of grooming behavior. It's the first test. Yeah. It's the first...
Yep.
How much can I abuse you?
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So one of the main criteria for narcissistic personality disorders is interpersonally exploitative, and that's exactly what he was doing there. And we see numerous examples of how he manipulates both Nieman and everybody else around him. And this is their mentor. This is the person that they want to be like. This is the person that they know holds the keys to their future. You even see the character Tanner.
You the new alternate?
Yeah, I'm Andrew Nieman.
Tune the set to B flat, then return my pages during rehearsal.
Emulate Fletcher as he dresses down, and they're abusive to each other, and that's the kind of culture that an abusive coach or mentor like this creates.
No, that's absolutely true. Any time I had an abusive coach, and I had quite a few, the captains would act the same way, and there were a couple times where I had very inspirational coaches, and then you had inspirational captains, and the fish just rots from the head down. Which this is a question I have that I have for you, because the players arrive. It's almost before 9 a.m. and the way they all snap to attention when Fletcher first walks into the room, they all just, it's like a military. It would drive me nuts as a basketball player, as anybody who was a part of a team, when people weren't ready. So how do you get that without being abusive? How do you get that without being like, I'm here, you guys aren't ready, get your asses on the baseline, we're going to run till we puke?
Well, I think you're talking about coaching from fear and coaching from respect and admiration.
Right.
And I've had on teams both ways, where you snap to attention out of fear and where you snap to attention out of admiration. And out of respect, because how do you do that? I mean, you set that tone from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
You set that tone from the beginning. You and I have both been in enough coaching, teaching, mentorship situations now, both on the mentor side and on the mentee side. You know which ones are good and which ones aren't. But we're now in our 40s. We're not 19-year-old Nieman. Who's super impressionable and super vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, I think that's the right answer, but I will also say the best coach that I ever had, the most inspirational coach that I ever had, we had a game where we had 30 turnovers. This is in basketball. We had 30 turnovers. And the next day was supposed to be our day off, and we're supposed to, we were in California, and so we were supposed to go to Disneyland, have a good team-building day. And he woke us all up, made us get in the gym, and we ran a set of lines for every turnover. And it was arguably abusive, but I got it. I understood why we were doing it. I respected him for making us do it. It was, you guys never play like that again. And we got the message. Nobody threw up. Nobody was injured. But I don't know. That's probably borderline abusive.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all depends on context. It all depends on nuance. How does he frame it? Okay, guys, get up, let's go. That we all know that was a terrible performance. We got to do something. We're going to do this. Did you guys still get to go to Disneyland? Did you still get to have a team building day?
No, everyone was exhausted.
Oh, okay. Wow, sorry. Wish I'd known that before launching into that. No, I mean, yeah. How do you do it right?
Yeah.
I think you know how to do it wrong. We can point out all the things that he did that was really, really wrong. One of the things I think that's really, really interesting about how wrong he did it was how he introduced to the group when Sean Casey died.
His name was Sean Casey, and the faculty were all telling him, maybe this isn't for you. And I put him in studio band. And when he graduated, Marsalis made him third trumpet at Lincoln Center. Sean died yesterday in a car accident.
He was very emotional about it, but he told them he died in a car accident when he actually killed himself. And the thing about that, and this was a great filmmaking point from a psychiatric point of view, he wasn't at all sad Sean Casey died. He was sad
that he didn't rise to the level of fame.
That some of his mentorship was wasted on this guy.
Yeah, right.
That's why he was sad.
So, Josh, I love that moment, and I'm glad you brought it up because there's something else I think that is interesting. We caught a lie. There's a lie we know about. But the rest of his story is, I found him, no one else wanted him, and I put him into whatever, the studio band.
Yeah.
I bet that was a lie. I bet he was...
good. That's a great point.
He was probably everybody's favorite. He was probably the best of the best, but Fletcher needed that to be the truth, and so that's the lie. But he's already lied. Why wouldn't he continue to lie?
That's excellent.
And it took me till this last watch and sort of looking at it through your lens that I was like, wait a minute. Why wouldn't he be lying about the whole thing? Why wouldn't he be lying about other aspects? We know he lied about this one.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And also very consistent with a person with classic narcissistic personality disorder.
Right.
All the
this person was worthless before me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why I had such a visceral reaction to the ending of this movie. You want to talk about the ending?
Let's save it. Let's go through some other stuff.
Okay.
There's a lot to talk about with the ending. Okay, so obviously JK takes him into the hallway, says, "Hey, you're here for a reason. Get some information from the kid so that he can abuse him with it." Classic line. But here's a question I have for you, because I thought this was really interesting. When Nieman walks in the room for the first time and the rest of the band sees there's a new guy, do they know what's about to happen?
Were you rushing or were you dragging?
I don't know. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
No. Was I rushing or was I dragging?
Do they know?
100%. 100%. They have seen this happen over and over and over and over again.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think that's and there is a little bit there's a little more fear in their eyes.
Well, right, and this is a characteristic of the abused person. When that happens, they're relieved. They feel relieved because they know for a time, the heat's going to be off them. Right.
Which is probably why Fletcher immediately fires somebody so that they don't know that. Like before he slaps Nieman, he kicks that one kid out.
Carried your fat ass for too long, Mets. I'm not going to have you cost us a competition because your mind's on a Happy Meal instead of on pitch. Why are you still sitting there? Get the out!
Yeah, today is not your day.
Yeah.
Oh, such good stuff. We're also talking about it like it really happened, and this is just a movie. But Damon is such a good writer
that's what movies try to make you do, right? I mean, they blur the line between reality and fast. Hey, I don't want to step on your toes. Those are all your lines, but.
Okay, so then we get into Nieman a little bit more. He has the first date with a girlfriend, asks her about her passion. She doesn't have one. That clearly bothers him. He's like, I don't understand. I'm here because it's the best. What do you want to do with your life? There's the dinner table scene where he's not respected.
Yes.
And so he just annihilates the Division III, football player.
Come play with us. 4 words you will never hear from the NFL.
Who wants dessert?
And from Lincoln Center?
And we see some division with the dad. We see the dad like, no, kid, like you're in the wrong here. Like there's a way to be a person, and you're not doing it.
So Jeff, let me ask you this. So do you think so Nieman starts to become a dick. He starts to be a dick to people.
Right.
He was a dick to Melissa Benoist's character. He was a dick to his family members. Was he always a dick, you think, before this?
No, I don't think so. I think it's only when he started to see himself as successful. I think that it's only
started to emulate the person he thinks he needs to be like to be successful.
Correct. Okay. And I think that you see that with Eyes Down. I mean, she makes the comment, which again, the writer is purposeful. She makes the comment, you always came in with your eyes down. You would never look at me. And then now that he's in core, now he asks her out.
Yeah,
now he's somebody.
Right. Yep.
Now he's a person.
Yep.
Now he has, he has meaning. So we talked about the midpoint, which is Fletcher's protege dies. And there's the scene where he immediately abuses those 3 kids, over and over again, arguably trying to replace the kid he just lost, and to push them to like find the next Sean Casey. But Miles wins, and then we get to the car accident scene.
Nieman, you're done.
And this is the only part of the movie where I'm like, it just felt a little bit like, not sloppy writing, but I just didn't believe it. There's no way that Fletcher allows him on stage when he's bleeding. That makes no sense. And even if you're an abuser, I think in that moment you have to have some sort of sense of self-preservation, where like, oh shit, this is gonna rise up to the president of the college.
Yeah, I know. I think that's, I got to disagree with you on that. First of all, I think Nieman was so obsessed at that point, nothing was going to stop him from barging in there. I don't think Fletcher really had the opportunity. to stop him. And I think, this is the great writing about such a toxic narcissist as Fletcher. Somebody else messes up like that, it's not going to affect him. In fact, it's not going to affect him so badly. I mean, he has such belief that he is so amazing, nothing can harm him, that he purposefully makes him screw up in the JVC or the JVC performance at the end. So no, I think that was actually pretty good.
Yeah, look, that's fair. I've seen it a couple times, so we'll just have to agree to disagree. I think that they set up the moment where he talks to the little girl, and so we see that he can fake, being a real mentor. But that's fair. And then to go right along with that moment, Miles Teller's character, and they had to have Miles Teller leave the college so that he loses his access to greatness.
Right.
Because you can bring in another coach. He ends up getting booted from the university. I don't know. I've been in college. I've been in grad school. I'm now teaching at college. Colleges will do anything they can to protect themselves. That's an immediate lawsuit if you kick a kid out. They would just sue. They would sue the university and absolutely win for having, being in a toxic situation. So there's no way they kick him out. But you had to have that moment because he needs to be separated from, his chance at greatness.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, he did assault his teacher in public.
Sure.
So there is that. Yeah. No, but you got a good point. I think that plot point sells probably very easily 15, 20 years ago, and not so much right now. But all of, and of course,
Fletcher,
it was 2014 movie.
Yeah, but all of Fletcher doesn't fly in today's day and age when, I don't know that those teachers exist anymore.
They do. They do. So? They're still they're still there. I mean, they do. One of the things about Fletcher's character that also, again, I would have liked a little bit more background on, is we didn't know anything else about him. A true, honest to God, narcissistic personality disordered person. The theory is that it really comes as it's a maladaptive technique to shield oneself from profound disappointment in oneself or a profound lack of self-esteem. It's almost like a hyper-exaggerated persona to protect from oneself. And we never got anything about his motivation or his character's background about why he would be that way. And maybe that's okay. Right. But for me, I wanted to see, okay, why is this guy this way? Why is he so toxic?
Look, that's a great question. Oftentimes that's a filmmaker's choice. This was a true first-person point of view movie. I don't think there's a scene that Miles Teller isn't in. So the only information that we as an audience can have is the information that he has.
Oh, that's great.
So that's why we don't. Yeah. That's why we don't dip into his backstory. You could easily make that movie a dual, protagonist antagonist movie. With that sort of like Heat. Heat was a great example.
Right.
With Robert De Niro and then they have that meeting at the cafe. It's like, brother, you're going down, and De Niro's like, don't get close to anything. Anyway, but this was a true.
No, you're right. But there was one main character. The main character was Miles Teller, and J.K. Simmons was a supporting character.
That's right. And really, this is more of an opinion than anything, but really good filmmaking is when you don't tell your audience things that the other characters, don't know. So like, we can't have that information about JK. We need to experience the world as Miles Teller is experiencing it.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Great point.
So we're speeding towards the end now. So Miles Teller, he's away. He's given up drumming, which, obviously you need to take him to the far extreme. he's
but also
possibly interested
also a very common reaction by an abused person. Just completely give that up.
Yeah, that's fair. I didn't know that. Yeah, and then they meet and they have, they basically just talk about the theme. Would Charlie Parker exist if the guy hadn't thrown the symbol at his head? Miles Teller's response.
But is there a line? Maybe you go too far and you discourage the next Charlie Parker from ever becoming Charlie Parker?
No, man, no. Because the next Charlie Parker would never be discouraged.
Yeah.
And that's the lie. That is the lie that J.K. Simmons' character believes. And that's the moment that Nieman really has the choice. Like, do I change? Do I get away from this guy, or do I sort of embrace? Do I embrace it? Obviously, he decides to go play for him, and then we have that last moment. And you had wanted to say something about the last scene.
I mean, the last scene's really impressive. It's incredibly impressive. My understanding from reading a little bit about it is that Miles Teller did a lot of his own drumming. He had some professional help, but he did a lot of his own drumming. I mean, the last scene is amazing. The drumming is fantastic. I was on the edge of my seat, but I did not like the ending because J.K. Simmons is Fletcher's gonna get away with this. I mean, he is gonna absolutely claim credit for this amazing new drummer, and really unfortunately for this abused young man, is Nieman does not have enough distance or perspective from the abuse to understand that, to not also just jump right back in with the adulation and the reinforcement. So yeah, this is my mentor. I mean, that was just sad for me. That was sad.
Yeah. And look, I don't disagree with you. And like I said earlier, this is technically a tragedy. In a way, it was like him deciding to go out and not let Fletcher, even him saying like "F you" when he's back on the drums. He has taken a little bit back for himself, where it's like, I'm not going to let you, like treat me this way anymore. He obviously is going to let him treat him that way. But yeah, it's a real tricky ending in terms of, what you want as a person, what you want as a viewer. It's hard. I mean, how do you be Kobe Bryant? How do you have that work ethic if this character believed the only path for him was to have this mentor? Is it wrong that he chooses that mentor?
Yes. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. This guy is an abusive, he's an abusive asshole who does not have anybody's sense of well-being in mind but his own. Yeah, I like how the filmmaker leaves it up to you to decide, okay, do you have to have this level of toxicity to hone you, to mold you? And I think the answer is no. I don't. I think that is a legacy that abusers, and really unfortunately, I mean, a lot of the abusive coaches I've had, they've been white men. I mean, that have perpetuated that. Like, this is how you have to be. And I think some of them don't necessarily want to be hard or abusive, or didn't want to be hard or abusive, thought that was the way you had to coach. And I think it's really toxic. And I don't think it's necessary to hone, to hone talent, to hone wonder. And I think that was a lie that was perpetuated, so that some people could continue to abuse.
Yeah, look, and I don't think you're wrong. I think you ask any great athlete. I think Tom Brady was asked this once, and he said that the coaches he remembers are the ones who inspired him.
Right.
Yeah, and I think you ask a lot of like professional athletes, and they'll say like, no, I mean the abusers pushed me, but the ones that I remember are the ones who inspired me to greatness, not threatened me or abused me to greatness. And I think that that's generally true. The question, as you said, is that true for Nieman? Is that it's you would say no. I don't know. I would lean towards yes in that regard. And if he wants to do whatever it takes, and that's what he thinks it takes, then who am I to say? Let me ask you a question. So let me ask you a question, because this is more personal to me. I am a professor, and I think about this a lot. Like, I've never hurled a symbol, but I have thrown. No, I'm kidding. I haven't thrown anything. But I think about this a lot. I have in one class I have 15 kids, and there's 2 kids that are brilliant, and there's a piece of me that wants to teach to those 2 kids. And then there's a piece of me that's like, no, it's your responsibility to teach to the 15. And I don't know what to do. I end up sometimes teaching to the 2 and leave everybody else in the dust. And sometimes I'm like, no, I'm not gonna stop until you all get this. I don't know. I don't know what my responsibility is there.
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think, first of all, when posed with interesting or challenging questions like this, I always challenge the framework. I don't know that it's a dichotomous choice, teach to one or teach to the many. I mean, the right answer is exactly what you're doing, right? Is teaching as best you can to all of them. And I think that that's probably this either or thinking that we get into, that we humans for some reason are naturally predisposed to. I think that's probably where some of the abusive behavior comes out, thinking it has to be one or the other instead of both and not perfectly both and. You can't do everything perfectly all the time.
Right.
I don't know that I think that's probably where to go. It's not. Is it think of Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one, but they don't have to.
I don't think there's enough to talk about in terms of Cinemental when it comes to Star Trek II. But let's just do it anyway, so that we can just sit and talk about that movie.
Oh, I think we can find mental health and enough psychological things to talk about almost any movie.
That's fair. Yeah, I do think about, because I love the moment in Whiplash, and we haven't talked about the moment, but Fletcher makes the point about like the 2 most harmful words in the English language are good job.
Imagine if Jones had just said, well, that's okay, Charlie. That was all right. Good job. There are no 2 words in the English language more harmful than good job.
And I think about that every time I tell one of my better students, hey, that was good. That even if I say like, hey, that was great, it doesn't push them to go further, and I move on to other students where I want to bring their work up to the same level. And I do think like, yeah, I did them a disservice by telling them it was great. And I don't know that I actually feel that way. It's just in that moment I think about Fletcher. I think about Fletcher, and that concept of good job is hurtful.
I'll disagree. I just have to disagree. I mean, there is so much negativity in the world. People need to hear positive. People need to hear positivity from their mentors. I disagree with that. I mean, you were saying just a couple minutes ago about how Tom Brady says he thinks about the mentors who inspire. And I was thinking about, in medicine and psychiatry, the couple mentors that I have, and they were positive people. They wanted me to do well. They wanted you to do the right thing. Did they push me? Absolutely. But did they tell me I did a good job when I did a good job? Absolutely. And that made a big difference. So no, a good job's a good job. If it's truly a good job, say good job. Good job. No, here's what you can do better.
I think about it a lot in terms of,
I just can't stand that kind of thinking.
I think about it in terms of a 10-point scale, where it's like, if someone's at a 7, I want to get them to an 8. If someone's at a 1, I want to get them to a 2. And that's where I sort of approach it. Like, let's assess what you did, and here's how you can get it up one level. Because there are nice things to say if someone's at a 1. If the whole thing is terrible, if their whole thing is terrible, there's probably something in there that's like, this is a good part we can build on. so that next time you can, if you're at a 1, get to a 2. If you're at a 7, get to an 8. So that's how I try and draw the line.
I think the key piece that's missing there, and that leads towards the type of thinking that justifies some of Fletcher's actions, is if they're at a 1, you want to get them to a 2. Maybe the thought should be, if they're at a 1, I want to get them to where they want to be.
Well, that's well said. That's very well said, because it's not my responsibility. It's the narcissist that's like, I can get them to a 2. It's like, no, they're going to get themselves to a 2. I actually had a boss once.
Remember, we all have some narcissists.
Right. I had a boss when I was first an agent, where agents, especially young agents, would say, "Oh, I got them that job," and he would go, "No, their talent got them that job. You might have provided them an opportunity, but they got themselves that job." And I thought that was really important. I thought that was an important distinction. Okay, let's wrap it up. You want to give it a grade, mental health wise?
Yeah, I'm gonna give this one a 7 amygdalas.
Okay. For people who might not know what that means.
Yeah, I don't really know what that means either, but that's the rating I'm going to give it. Yeah, no.
Okay.
This movie did a lot of things well in portraying narcissistic personality disorder. Talking through with you, I see a lot of those choices that were dissatisfying to me were filmmaking choices that is okay to make this movie as powerful as it was. But it was a movie that really, really showed narcissistic personality disorder. Terrence Fletcher could be a poster child for that, and could be used to teach that.
Yeah. Well said. In terms of the filmmaking, I love this movie. I'm going to give it a double time swing in terms of my rating. This was the high end of filmmaking. So, that's how I feel. What are we doing next week? We talked about Saltburn. You want to do Saltburn next week?
Let's do Saltburn.
Right. Okay. So tune in next week, because we will do Saltburn. So thank you all for listening. As always, if you like this, make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We're available. We're also on YouTube. Make sure and hit the button, all the notifications. You know what to do, all the stuff. And now that we've done 3 and you've heard a little about what we do, let us know what movies you want to see done. We have a list of movies that we want to talk about, but if there's things and enough people say, they want to see Star Trek 2, we will do that. We will give you Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan. I'm Jeff Jones, and for Dr. Josh Jones, we will see you next week.